In this movie, we're going to finish talking about the other general options, including the creating workbook options, options where you can personalize Excel or personalize Office actually, but since we're talking about Excel, we'll talk about Excel. And then there's also some startup options. So we're in Excel, of course. Where else would we be? And we're going to go back to the general options by pressing Alt-F-T. So we're going to begin by talking about the when creating new workbooks options. In the prior movie, we looked at the user interface options, and when we made changes, we could see them immediately take effect once we got back into the workbook. The when creating new workbooks options are not like that. You'll actually have to close Excel down and open it back up to see these changes take effect. And because of that, I'm going to change all 4 of these at the same time. These are the default settings. Body font is the default font, but I'm going to make a change that's going to make it obvious that I've changed to something different, like Arabic typesetting, and I'm not even sure what that looks like, but I guess we'll find out together. I'm going to change from 11 point to 20 point, so that's pretty dramatic. The normal view, we have 2 other choices, the page break preview and the page layout view. I'm going to change it to the page layout view. And instead of 1 sheet, which is the default, it used to be 3 actually, I'm going to change it back to 3. And you can advance this number up to 255 worksheets. Why anybody would ever need 255 worksheets in a workbook, I'm not real sure, but you can do it. So I'm going to left click OK, and I get the message, please close and restart Microsoft Excel so that the font changes can take effect. I'm going to left click OK on that. So I'm going to close the program, and then I'm going to open it back up. So I've opened Excel back up, and we can see some pretty dramatic differences. One, the most obvious one, is we're in the page layout view. We have 3 sheets that are in this workbook instead of 1. The default font is Arabic typesetting, 20 point. So my cells are larger than they would have otherwise been because I've increased the point size, and the cells need to accommodate the new font type that we selected. And we can see what that looks like. Well, it's not that much different than Calibri, although I guess it's a little different. So you're not stuck with Calibri, which is the default font for Excel. You can change the point size, and you can change whether we're looking at the normal view, the page break preview, or the page layout view, which is what our current setting is. So I've reset everything back to the default, and we're going to go back to Alt-F-T and look at some more general option settings. We can personalize our copy of Microsoft Office. The username by default picks up the account setting for Windows. I have a recording account that I've set up for the purposes of recording these movies, which is obviously what I'm currently doing. So whatever name that you've defined for your Windows account, that's the name that will show up here, but you can change that if you want to. The second choice we have is Office background. The default is no background, but we have a number of choices that we can select from. And I'm going to select calligraphy, and in a second I'll show you what that's going to do. The Office theme is white, but we have 2 other choices, light gray and dark gray. I'm going to choose light gray. These option settings, these choices, will have an immediate impact on the way Excel looks. So I'm going to left click OK, and the color's been changed from white to light gray, and we have a calligraphy design in the upper right hand corner. Alt-F-T. I'm going to change to a slightly different design just to see what one of these other ones looks like. As I change to dark gray, left clicking OK. So you can customize the way Excel looks or appears to a limited extent. By the way, this is a lot like what the 2010 ribbon used to look like. And this is kind of nice actually, because when you choose one of the tabs, it's more obvious which tab that you're on because of that color scheme. Going back once again, Alt-F-T. And we also have some startup options. We can define whether Excel is going to be the default program for the different file types that you may come in contact with. I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to cancel that and keep the defaults. We have a checkbox which is checked so that Excel will tell us if it's not the default program for viewing and editing spreadsheets. And finally, the show the start screen when this application starts checkbox is checked by default. And that is the initial screen that appears when you launch Excel, the start screen, which looks like this. We can turn that option off, and instead of showing the start screen initially, you go right into a worksheet. So those are the rest of the general option settings. We looked at creating workbooks and how we have some choices regarding the default font, the point size, the view of the workbook, and how many worksheets we open up by default. We can also personalize Excel by adding some designs up in the upper right-hand corner and changing the color scheme to either white, light gray, or dark gray. And finally, we have some startup options where we can define whether Excel is a default program for different file types. We can have Excel tell us when it's not the default program, and we can turn off the start screen if we want to do that.